Hi, in this video I'm going to teach you how to solve quadratic equations with imaginary solutions using the quadratic formula. So to recap, what is the quadratic formula? Feel free to pause at this time to reflect and think about what the quadratic formula is. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this formula gives you the zeros of your quadratic equation, and remember that the zeros of a quadratic equation are the values you get for x when your y is 0. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about a special portion of the quadratic formula, and it is called the discriminant. If you see, I have highlighted the portion under the radical. This portion is in fact the discriminant. So to find the discriminant of a quadratic equation, you do b squared minus 4ac. And then the discriminant tells you special information about your quadratic equation. So if the discriminant is positive, meaning greater than 0, then your quadratic equation will have two real solutions. If your discriminant is 0, then your quadratic equation will only have one real solution. So it has one real solution, so that means that the 0 has a multiplicity of 2. Because remember from the fundamental theorem of algebra, if your degree is 2, then you should have two zeros. But a discriminant of 0 means that you only have one real solution. So how do you have one real solution when you're supposed to have two solutions? The answer is that your solution is a repeat, so you have two of the same solution, which is what multiplicity of 2 means. Alright, so lastly, if your discriminant is negative, meaning less than 0, then your quadratic equation will have two complex or imaginary solutions. So let's go ahead and get started with an example. Alright, so example 1, 2x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. So I like to start with writing down what my a, b, and c values are. So a equals 2, b equals 4, and c equals negative 5. So now we are going to evaluate our discriminant. So remember, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. It's the portion under the radical in the quadratic formula. Alright, so now let's substitute in our values. So b squared would be 4 squared minus 4. Our a is 2 and our c is negative 5. So now we just simplify. So 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 5 is positive 40. So 16 plus 40 is 56. So our discriminant is 56. And if you look back at your notes, a positive discriminant means that you will have two real solutions. So 56 means two real solutions. Alright, so now we are good to use the quadratic formula to solve for x. So remember, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now we can substitute our values. So x equals, b is 4, so negative b would be negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 4 squared, minus 4, a is 2, c is negative 5, all over 2a. So now we simplify. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root. And then remember, the portion under the radical is the discriminant, and we already found what the discriminant was. It was 56. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 56 over 4. A lot of you are probably thinking you're done now, but we have to see if we can factor 56 to simplify the radical. So 56 breaks down to 2 times 28. 28 breaks down to 2 times 14, and 14 breaks down to 2 times 7. So remember, when we take the square root of something, we're looking for pairs of a factor that we can take out. So we have 2 2's. So 2 comes out. We don't have any more 2's and we don't have any more 7's. So 2 times 7 stays under the radical. So square root of 56 is equal to 2 square roots of 14. So 2 square roots of 14 is the simplified version of square root of 56. So now we can simplify what we got for x. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 14 over 4. You're probably thinking you're done now, but that's not the case. We have to simplify until we can't simplify anymore. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 14 over 2. And now you're done. You could simplify it this way, or you could break it up and have x equals negative 4 over 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 14 over 4, which would give you negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 14 over 4. So either way is correct. I just happen to prefer doing it this way, but this way and this way are correct. Alright, so it's simple enough. 2 real solutions, and we ended up with 2 real solutions because plus or minus means you take negative 2 and add the square root of 14 and then divide by 2. And then you also take negative 2 and subtract square root of 14 and then divide by 2, which gives you 2 answers. Alright, so now we are going to take a look at example number 2. Alright, so example number 2. Let's start by writing down our A, B, and C values. So A is 1, B is 4, and C is 4. So now let's find the discriminant. And remember, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So our b is 4, so 4 squared minus 4ac. Now we simplify. So 16 minus 4 times 1 is 4. Well, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. So 16 minus 16. And then 16 minus 16 is 0. So our discriminant is 0. So if you remember from your notes, if you don't, feel free to look back, but if your discriminant is 0, then your quadratic equation will have one real solution. So since our discriminant is 0, we can expect one real solution. So now let's solve using the quadratic formula. So remember, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now let's substitute our values. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 all over 2 times 1. So now let's simplify. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus. Remember, what's under the radical is your discriminant, and we found our discriminant. We found it to be 1. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. So x equals negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So we're supposed to have one real solution. We got x equals negative 2, which is one real solution. And now I'm going to show you how we can have only one solution, but our equation is a quadratic, so we're supposed to have 2. So remember from previous lessons, a 0 of negative 2 means that your factor is x plus 2. And then since we have one real solution but our degree is 2, we're supposed to have 2 solutions. So this means that this factor, x plus 2, has a multiplicity of 2. So then if you multiply this out, double distribute, you get x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. Remember, double distribute. So then combine like terms. So x squared plus 4x plus 4. And look, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4, which was our original problem. So that's why one real solution means that the one solution that you get has a multiplicity of 2. So if this is fuzzy, then look back at your fundamental theorem of algebra notes. Alright, so now I am going to do the last example, example 3. So example 3, x squared plus 2x plus 2 equals 0. So let's start by writing our a, b, and c values. So a is 1, b is 2, and c is 2. Alright, so next we find our discriminant. Remember, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So that would be 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2. So 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So we get 4 minus 8. 4 minus 8 is negative 4. So now our discriminant is negative. So look back at your notes. A negative discriminant means that you will have two complex zeros. And remember, complex means imaginary. So, two complex solutions. Alright, so now let's use the quadratic formula to solve. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now let's substitute our values. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2 all over 2 times 1. Alright, let's simplify. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root. And then remember, what's under the radical is your discriminant, which we found to be negative 4. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 over 2. Now remember, we have been learning about imaginary numbers, and the whole reason we have imaginary numbers is so that we can evaluate negative radicands. Remember, your radicand is the number that is under the radical, so in this case negative 4. So the way we simplify the square root of negative 4 is we rewrite this as the square root of negative 1 times 4. Remember, we take the negative 1 out and it becomes I. So this equals I square root of 4, but then the square root of 4 is 2. So we get 2I. So now we can put this in for square root of negative 4. So we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2I over 2. So now we simplify. Always simplify anything you're doing in math if it can be done. Alright, so x equals negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we get negative 1 plus or minus I. So that is our complex solution. Remember, we have a real part and the imaginary part. So I hope this helped. Thanks for watching.